Hello, and hello. Thank you very much for joining me today, especially you, Monsieur Fabio. Thank you very much for joining me, Fabio, and for sending in this video for me to react to. I would have never known, based off the title, that this was a German incident. A German plane, I believe. How a pilot hijacked a plane. Straightforward title, 5 million views. Holy crap. Go check out Fern. This channel is actually awesome. I'm a little bit familiar with this channel. Very cool channel. Check them out. Link down below. Cool videos. Anyway, how to pilot. Why do I keep saying how to pilot a plane? This isn't a tutorial. Hopefully it's not. That would be a bad video. How a pilot hijacked a plane. Actually, it kind of sounds like a tutorial, huh? Don't do it, though. I won't.
At 9:27 a.m. on the 24th of March, 2015,
I love the look of this video already.
Plane got in contact with the Marseille en route control center. It was an Airbus A320-211,
Germanwings, there you go.
operated by Germanwings, headed from Barcelona to Dusseldorf. Everything seemed normal. The captain read back the air traffic controller's clearance at 9:30, allowing him to fly to an en route waypoint. Only a few minutes later, something was off. The control center in Marseille saw that the altitude for the aircraft was around 30,000 feet, almost 2,000 feet lower than the original cruise altitude, and declining. Marseille contacted the plane and asked what altitude the plane was cleared for, but they received no response at all.
I'm just wondering right now, if you see signs like this, that clearly a plane's not doing what it should do, I wonder if these people can take control of the plane. Maybe that would be bad. Like, I could imagine how that could be bad, but also how it could be good to be able to remotely control the plane.
Over the next 30 seconds, Marseille tried to contact the flight crew 2 more times. No answer. At 9:34, the control center tried a different frequency, but again, no response. From 9:35 until 9:39, the Marseille control center tried to contact the flight crew multiple times over different frequencies. An air traffic controller from the French air defense system also tried, as well as another aircraft. But each time, no response from Germanwings flight 9525. At 9:40,
like I say sometimes, I get these thoughts in my head and I just can't stop thinking it. And I want to know if Germanwings is like just the fact that it's called Germanwings and not, Deutschlandwings or something. Is it actually a German airline? It's a division of Eurowings. Okay. Operating out of Berlin. Okay. A German low-cost airline. Got it. Got it. Shocking. Germanwings is a German airline.
40 radar contact was lost. The French air traffic... At 9:40, radar contact was lost. The French air traffic controllers triggered a distress phase, declaring that the aircraft and its occupants were in imminent danger and required immediate assistance. At 9:41 a.m., flight Germanwings 9525 crashed into the side of a mountain in the Alps. What happened?
Now that I feel like, I don't know. I feel like, when did this happen? Just a few years ago, huh? I think I heard about this, but just barely, This is a crazy story.
The crash occurred on a remote mountain. Because there was no access by road, emergency crew had to be brought in via helicopter. The plane was completely destroyed, the debris field vast, but the pieces of the craft small. The cockpit voice and flight recorder were found in the same week, although they were both severely damaged. When flight investigators stitched together the data, a story of intentional action formed.
Wow.
The plane was hijacked, but not by terrorists. Let's go back.
What?
After the aircraft leveled off at its cruise altitude, the captain left the cockpit to go to the bathroom at 9:30. While he was in the bathroom, the plane was almost
Aren't there normally like more than one captain?
immediately set for a different altitude in the cockpit. At 9:34, the captain came back and requested access, but he got none. The door was locked. As he stood in front of that cockpit door, the captain began to understand. The co-pilot had hijacked the plane. And he had no way of getting in.
Wow. That's a relatively, well, I guess that shows how old I am. That's not new, but isn't that after 9/11 that they made those laws where you can't, or not laws, but like, you know, they made the cockpits impenetrable. If the pilots don't want you in there, you're not getting in. That might be what they're about to talk about.
After 2001, cockpits were changed in order to protect those flying the plane from potential hijackers. To enter the cockpit, a crew member has to call the cockpit on the intercom and press the pound key on a keypad, which buzzes the cockpit. At that moment, the pilot can switch the door control from norm to unlock, and the crew member can enter. The crew is also given emergency codes, which they can use if there are concerns for those in the cockpit.
Okay.
In that case, the crew member will use the emergency code on the keypad, triggering a 30-second timer, and the cockpit door will open for 5 seconds.
Interesting. I wonder, what's the rationale? It's interesting. 30 seconds. You gotta wait 30 seconds, and then... Are the pilots armed? That would be interesting. I have no idea, but that's just what I'm thinking. Like, what would you need to do in 30 seconds? Well, maybe if someone is trying to get in, like they've, you know, they've taken someone hostage who knows the code and they're getting in. You have 30 seconds to arm yourself potentially, but I don't know if they, anyway.
However, there are situations where those in the cockpit want to override the access by the crew, like during a hijacking. In that situation, the pilots can switch the door control to lock, overriding all emergency access. And it's that mechanism that the co-pilot used to permanently lock access to the cockpit while the plane began to descend. The captain was locked out of the cockpit without any control. At 9:39, the cockpit voice recorder picked up violent blows on the cockpit door.
Man, how horrifying would that be? I feel so horrible for these people on this plane. My God. Being on a plane and seeing the captain desperately banging on the door, not able to get in, that is not a good sign. You know what I mean?
The captain had repeatedly tried breaking in to gain access, but the cockpit door was reinforced. Made to withstand armed hijackers, the captain stood little chance. In the last minutes, the passengers, crew, and captain all knew that the plane was going down. No one survived the crash. 144
What the hell was this guy's motive?
passengers, 4 cabin crew, and the captain and co-pilot died. Amongst the passengers was an entire school class returning from a field trip to Spain. The captain, Patrick Sondenheimer, was a 34-year-old father of 2. In the aftermath, his wife set up a foundation in his name, intended to help children and young people handle grief and crisis. He had thousands of total flight hours, and his last moments were dedicated to trying to save the plane and passengers. The co-pilot was 27 years old, and from a young age, he was passionate about flying. His bedroom had posters of Airbus, Boeing, and Lufthansa, and he'd become an expert glider pilot as a child. He joined Lufthansa's flight academy straight out of school, but only a few months into the program, he stopped. He was suffering from a deep depressive episode, treated with antidepressants, and spent multiple months in the care of a psychiatrist. Eventually, he received a medical recommendation declaring that he was in remission. After a few
Remission from depression? I've never heard of such a thing. Like, that's interesting to me. You get a certificate. Oh, this guy's in remission, like cancer, but from depression. Interesting. I mean, I guess it makes sense.
months, his student pilot license and fit-to-fly medical certificate were restored. But if he needed any more psychiatric treatment, he'd be grounded from flying. But he continued with his training until he ran into a problem. While filling out a document required by the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration to fly at an Arizona-based, Lufthansa-operated flight school, he said that he had never been diagnosed with any mental disorders. This was a lie, and he got caught. Lying on an FAA application can lead to a jail offense or the end of a flying career.
Wow, that's... I mean, honestly, after he lies on that form, I'm glad he's even... How did he end up being a co-pilot? But he shouldn't have lied. I don't know why... I mean, I don't know. Obviously, I don't know. But I would think just because you had depression at one point in your life, I don't think that's going to stop you from being a pilot.
But the FAA gave him a second chance. He admitted to depression and was accepted to go to Arizona.
Oh, okay.
In 2013, he joined Germanwings, a low-budget airline owned by Lufthansa. And a year later, his depression returned. He thought he was going blind, visiting ophthalmologists and neurologists multiple times per week because he was seeing stars, halos, flashes of light, streaks, and flying insects. But the doctor's scans didn't find much. He was diagnosed with hypochondriacal disorder, as well as emergent psychosis from his family doctor.
Doesn't that just mean that you're a hypochondriac? You just think you're sick when you're not?
And that doctor urged him to go to a psychiatric clinic, but he'd do no such thing. Instead, in January of 2015, he returned to the psychiatrist that had helped him in the first place. He received psychotherapy and went on heavy antidepressants while continuing to work and fly. From February to March, he received multiple sick notes from multiple doctors. He wasn't all right, and he wanted something to change. 4 days before the crash, he turned to his computer to understand the locking mechanism on the Airbus A320 cockpit door. On his outbound flight from Dusseldorf to Barcelona, he tested the descent settings for a moment while Sondenheimer was outside the cockpit.
What a demented thing to do. Like, you have sympathy up until you decide to take hundreds of other people along with you. What the heck?
On the return flight, he used it to bring down the plane. How could this have happened? Pilots are required to do health screenings and annual checkups, but mental health is easier overlooked than physical. Since pilots operate under an honor system, they're expected to self-evaluate their health.
What?
And this can be an issue.
Honor system? I don't know if I want the honor system being the one keeping me in the air in a flying tube, but it seems to work pretty well most of the time, I guess.
Co-pilot was declared unfit to work by his doctor, but he decided to just not tell his employer. But if someone like him is a risk to public safety, a doctor can break doctor-patient confidentiality and report him to authorities. So why didn't at least one of the multiple doctors who wrote multiple sick notes and declared him unfit to fly think that the co-pilot may have presented a risk for public safety? Enough of a risk that he couldn't be trusted to report himself. We don't know. The doctors may have believed the co-pilot was a risk to himself, but not to others. Being depressed does not make you a killer.
Yeah, and that's a particularly sad thing about it, is on one hand, if a pilot is depressed, That doesn't mean you just take away his pilot license. Like, I don't think that makes any sense. That would just make him more depressed, and that's just, unfair. Just doesn't make sense, because 99.99% of people who are depressed or experience depression aren't going to hurt other people.
Or maybe the doctors were just scared. Breaking doctor-patient confidentiality does not come without risks. It's even possible cultural factors could have played a role. Privacy and data protection are valued really highly in Germany. But trying to understand why doctor-patient confidentiality wasn't broken is a dilemma and issue best left to healthcare professionals and ethics professors. And unfortunately, we're YouTubers. So we encourage you to read more about it in these articles.
This makes me think of something that I've always thought was kind of fascinating, which is just that an inside job for any kind of tragic event or action that someone wants to do, or that you can prepare against. If it's someone on the inside who has trusted authority, there's almost like nothing you can do sometimes. There's pretty much nothing you can do. If the very person that you're trusting, the captains, they have all these things in place to keep the captains safe, because they're the ones that are supposed to be trusted to fly the plane safely. If the captain himself decides, as evidenced, seen here, he wants to do something like that. But then again, I guess what I was saying earlier about it would be interesting to be able to shut off the controls in the cockpit and control it remotely, although I could see that being disastrous potentially. It could go either way.
Nonetheless, when you're watching this today, it's important to understand that this type of incident is incredibly unlikely. In the aftermath, the European Aviation Safety Agency proposed multiple safety regulations. Psychological screening for pilots increased, and multiple airlines adopted a two-person in the cockpit at all time rule, although Lufthansa has recently phased this out. In 2015, Germanwings was rebranded to Eurowings. The decision was made prior to the crash. In the end, Lufthansa compensated the families of the victims, but there are questions about whether it was enough. The families have faced
Can it ever be enough?
losses that no money could ever heal.
Exactly. Wow. That's a tragic story. I'm surprised I didn't know more about that. It gives me a little bit of, it reminds me of this incident a little bit where a airport, he wasn't a pilot, but he was an airport employee that wanted to become a pilot, and he was depressed, and he hijacked a plane. He was the only occupant, though. And it is the craziest thing. If you look up videos about this, it's crazy. He literally took the plane, did loop-de-loops in the air. Look, he's doing a barrel roll with a commercial airliner. Did stuff like that and was just talking to air traffic control. You can listen to it on YouTube. And he was just calm, and he was explaining, he's just doing that. He dreamed of being a pilot, and this was his way of going out. Crazy story. This one is far more tragic because he took a lot of innocent people with him, including kids. Just awful. And the amount of victims, staggering. You know what I mean? Staggering. It's so sad when someone in a trusted position like that just takes advantage of their authority. That's really sad. Thanks for suggesting that. It was definitely fascinating. Check out Fern, link down below. That was a really great, well put together video. And, yeah, I don't know what to say. That was really sad. And my condolences go out to the victim and the families. the victims and their families. I will see you guys tomorrow.